Alright, what's going on, guys? This is Manelki, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. So we're in Crusader Kings 2 here, and I've been looking around the comments on the channel from the previous two CK2 videos that I've done, the tips and tricks videos, and there's been some questions thrown in the comments, which is really great. That's what I want to see. So people have been asking questions just about the game, you know, random questions about mechanics and this and that, and I thought I'd take this time to answer those questions in a video. Now, I did answer them in the comments, but I wanted to go deeper and make a proper video out of it. That way everybody can kind of see and we can kind of address those issues. And of course, if there's any more questions that I don't cover in this video that you guys have, I'd be more than happy to address them in a future video. But for now, I've kind of picked out a few questions from those videos that I would like to address. Now, this video is very, very late. Some of these comments are months, if not a year old or more. I just haven't had time. I'm really busy IRL. Super busy, but I'm finally sitting down to make this video, so we're getting her done today. So first off, casual YouTube viewer says, Manalki, would you consider going into more detail about inheritance mechanics, or could you tell me how to marry personally into inheriting, say, a duchy? My granddaughter had a claim to England, so I made sure her claim got pushed and made her queen. However, the heir was not of my family, but that of a duke in England. How come, and how can I get my hands on it? So that's a bit of a multifaceted question, so we'll take that step by step. So first of all, inheritance mechanics. Now, we touched on this in a previous video. We could certainly have a look at it again. Now, I don't want to sort of reiterate everything I went over in that last video as to explaining each and every one of these. They're, you know, I wouldn't say completely self-explanatory, but if you kind of mouse over, you kind of see what they do. But basically, the gist of it is you have your two different your two different categories of inheritance, I guess, laws. You have gender laws. Basically, agnatic means that only males can inherit, and then absolute cognatic means that women inherit on the same grounds men do. We have agnatic cognatic, which basically means men will inherit. If there's a woman present, she will not inherit, but if there's a girl and there's no guy, then she will get it, that kind of thing. And the other big thing about inheritance laws is gavelkind. That's the sort of big thing that's going to really trip up a lot of people. Do you see here gavelkind? That's what we're on, and that's what most countries in the game start as. Later in the game, you might start as a different succession law, but generally you start on gavelkind, and you're going to want to get off of that. And the reason for that is, while it does give you a larger domain, which is your collection of personal castles, basically gavelkind is going to split your realm. So if we look at our current situation here, we're the Duke of Gwynedd, which is later going to become Wales, but I just started this game, so whatever. Anyway, so we have this duchy, right? When we die on gavelkind, all of our titles are going to be split amongst our kids, and they're all males, so they'll all inherit, right? So we have three pieces of land and a fourth title. Well, we have two titles personally, but we have vassals. The real point is we have a duchy title and we have a county title. So one of our kids is going to get the county of this I'm not even going to try that. So one kid's going to get that county, and one of the other kids is going to get the top title. It's going to be the heir. This guy here, Hywel, he's going to get the top tier title, which is the Petty Kingdom of Gwynedd. So he will inherit this duchy. So even though other kids will get, you know, maybe my different lands here, someone else will get the county. The point is, since he's our heir, we're going to play as him when we die. So it doesn't really matter who inherits all this. It doesn't matter how fractured really this gets. I mean, yeah, you might lose some domain, but it doesn't really matter how fractured this becomes, because at the end of the day, the top title controls it all, right? So what people get tripped up on with gavelkind is, let's say we weren't a duke. Let's say we still owned these three territories, but we were still a count. Like this guy. You see how he's got that sort of thin silver border? That means count. Counts rule a single county. Whereas you see here, we have a thicker, more impressive looking border that has gems in it. That means duke. So it takes a duke to rule a duchy, right? So if we were a single count, just like this guy, and we went to war and we conquered these two territories, right? But we never actually formed the duchy. So what would be, in that case, would be a triple count if we owned all three of these. So in that case, under gavelkind, because we own three of our top tier title, that's to say we didn't have a duchy here, we just had three counties, Well, of course, under Galvokine, your titles are split up amongst your kids, which means each kid would get control of a separate county and they would not be consolidated under one person anymore, which means the realm would shatter. So you get around this with Galvokine by only owning one of your top tier title. So you see here, we have in our realm 3, counties or whatever, and we personally have 1 county. But this is our top title, which is a duchy, and we only have 1. So if we own 2 duchies, if we had this and then we had this, then we'd be a double duke. And then we'd have 2 duchy titles here. You see the difference in the crowns here. That denotes county and that denotes duchy, and then it goes on kingdom and empire. But basically, if we had 2 duchies, then we'd be a double duke. And then when we die, both of our duchies would be split up amongst our kids, and then that would shatter the realm. You'd have 2 separate nations, right? So that's the sort of the gist of the inheritance and how that works. And the other thing to remember is if you want to do a lot of realm consolidation, so one trick people use to get a lot of land in a long game, there's a succession law called seniority, right? The oldest member of the dynasty inherits all titles. And the reason that's good is because what you can do is if you send your daughters and your kids everywhere all over the world making babies in your line, and as you're growing your country internally, whatever, you start to grow. But every now and then, someone of your kids and your kin will eventually pick up territory of their own, right? They'll just, through the course of time, they will find their way into the line of succession of these different countries, and they'll get territory of their own, right? So let's say you have this cousin who owns this county of Leiningen over in France, right? So what's going to happen is, let's say he gets really old, and he happens to be the oldest member of your dynasty, even though he's not part of your country, he's part of your family, and just happens to own this territory. What's going to happen is, when you die, rather than the title passing to one of your kids, it's going to pass to the oldest member of your dynasty, which in this case is this guy. So what's going to happen is this guy, in addition to his current territory, he's going to inherit your kingdom. And so the net effect of that is your kingdom grows. So that's a really great way to gain a lot of territory all over the place, is by making lots of babies, using seniority succession, and you can get a lot of territory that way. And you can experiment with the different types of inheritance laws, kind of come up with little strategies like that. That's just one I like to use. So on to the question of, could you tell me how to marry personally into inheriting a duchy? So yeah, basically it's the same kind of thing. So let's say we wanted to inherit this duchy, right? The Duchy of Dehubarth. I'm sorry, I can't Welsh. So Dehubarth. So let's say we wanted to inherit this. So you see here, this is the line of succession for this duchy. And this, by the way, is pretty new as of a few patches ago, probably about a year ago. This used to not be here. It was just a list. I think if I can find it here. Dehubarth. No, it's... Yeah, that. That's used to be all you'd have. Good luck. And the problem with this, of course, is there's a lot of different characters in the game who are named the same thing. So when you go to interact with these people, you end up in trouble. So this is a much better way. So this is the Duchy of Dehubarth, and it's owned by Rhys Morganwg. Okay, so this is the line of succession for that duchy. So he owns it. This is his heir. So when he dies, this guy's going to get the duchy, right? And then, if he was to mysteriously die, well, then it would default to this guy. And if he was to die, it would default to this kid, and so on and so forth. So what you can do is, now that we have these nice little things to click on, what you can do, if you want to, marry into it personally and make it quicker, well, if you happen to be single and the heir happens to be single and you're of different sexes, you can just right-click here and then try and marry yourself to him. But what's more likely going to happen is you probably are going to be married. So we already have a wife here. So what we can do, since we already have a wife, we can marry one of our kids to one of these people. So let's say this guy, single, yeah, he is. So he can say, we can betroth, oh wait, no, he's not, sorry. You are single, okay. So we can betroth this guy, say our granddaughter, right? And what we can do in this case, because he's a man, and he's going to marry, we're going to try and get him to betroth and eventually marry our granddaughter, Marshall. What we can actually do is we can say matrilineal. Now, see how he was willing to marry our granddaughter straight up? But if we go matrilineal, he says no. So what matrilineal means is that normally when a man and woman get married in medieval times, or well, I guess in modern day too, really, the kids of that union will take on the man's dynasty, right? So any kids of these two will become kids of Gwerd Bakal. So they'll take the Apbrockful name, I guess, right? But we don't want that. We want the kids to take her name, and that way they become of our line. So you'd click matrilineal, and of course, for obvious reasons, they're going to be less inclined to accept that. And so the further up the line of succession and the closer to the heir you go, the harder it's going to be to get them to agree to this. This is going to depend on things like your prestige. It's going to depend on how much they like you, you know, if there's any religious differences and all that kind of stuff. But occasionally you can get them to marry you. And the further down you go, of course, the easier it's going to get. But sometimes even the very last in line will not want you to do it. And sometimes it is how it is, right? So hypothetically, what you would do, let's say he was willing to do it, right? So betrothal, martial, matrilineal. Let's say he said yes. What's going to happen is these two people will, when she gets to be 16, they'll start making babies, right? And what's going to happen is that baby, assuming he doesn't have kids, I assume let's just say he doesn't have kids. Children, he has no kids. Okay, so he has no heir. So when that guy and our daughter Marshall eventually have a baby, that will become his heir, right? So at this point, he is in line to own the territory, and he has an heir. So at that point, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to murder this guy, because he's higher in the line of succession. So we don't want the title going to this guy. We want the title going to this guy. So what you'd do is you'd marry off little Marshall to Gwerd, and then she would be married to him. And once you've got that in place, murder this guy. Plot to kill him. Do what you got to do to get this man dead, which is going to put him as the heir. And once you have this, you can wait for this guy to die. He looks pretty old. He's 66. Or again, you can murder him. And at that point, this guy here is going to own the duchy. And then you have a situation where the owner of a duchy is married to somebody of your dynasty, and their children will become the heir. And so what's going to happen is somebody of your dynasty will eventually own this duchy. Now, if you're using seniority succession or one of those weird succession laws to help you consolidate, that is a way you can get that thing into your realm. If you're a couple ranks above him, so if he's a count and you're a king, you can offer to vassalize him. Because he's your close kin, he's more likely to say yes to that, and it'll consolidate that way. But if you want to marry personally, what you want to do is you're going to have to make sure you're single, and of course a different sex. So you'd have to basically, you know, betroth yourself to this kid here, this girl. She's 0 and we're, 45, so that would be a little awkward. You'd have to wait a long time, but you kind of get what I'm saying. So you'd have to marry, if you want to do it personally, you'd have to marry this person and then have babies with somebody in the line of succession. That way that baby is your heir, right? And then you murder everybody above it. So that's basically how you do it, to put your kids in line to inherit, say, a duchy. Now, trying to inherit it personally yourself, I don't really think you can do that, because you can't really make somebody your heir unless there's something I'm missing. You can put kids down the line in the line of succession by marriage and kids and stuff like that, but putting yourself, just dropping yourself in the line of succession, unless you're already in that line, I don't think it really works that way. So as for your granddaughter's claim on England and how she became queen and it wasn't part of your realm and somebody else was the heir, what probably happened there was, unless you happened to be an emperor at the time, your granddaughter is going to go independent. So normally if you have like a close family member, like a daughter or even a granddaughter or whatever, inherits a title, if you're of higher rank than them, they'll just become part of your kingdom. But what happened probably, let's say you were a duke or even a king in this case, if your granddaughter becomes a queen, well, a king can't rule a king or a queen for that matter, so she would go independent, right? It takes an emperor to rule a king. So if she became the Queen of England, unless you happen to be an emperor somewhere, she's going to break off and separate into her own kingdom. Now, as for, the heir not being of your family, what probably happened there was her husband was, of course, not of your family, right? So if your granddaughter and him had a baby together, that would be his heir, because the man, of course, it's his line passed on. Unless, the only way around that, of course, is if the marriage was matrilineal, but it doesn't sound like it was, otherwise that wouldn't be the case. Or he might have had an heir before he married your granddaughter, that sort of thing. Now, how can you get your hands on it? Well, murder. Murder is the solution, is the answer to that question, casual YouTube viewer. So you're going to want to murder whoever the heir is. If he's not of your dynasty, kill him. And then get your granddaughter married matrilineally to somebody, have them pump out a baby, and that baby will be of your family. If she's the Queen of England, you might have trouble arranging her marriage because she doesn't need none of that from you, right? She's the Queen of England. I don't think she's gonna take your orders. I think she has to be in your kingdom for you to tell who to marry, but I could be mistaken on that, but I think that's how it works. So it might be an awkward situation, but again, you could actually, another thing, you could change this seniority. Seniority succession over here. You could change to this and hope she gets really old, and that would put, you know, her as your heir, and then you'd eventually play as her and consolidate the realm that way. So there's a bunch of different ways you could go about that, but basically when you're marrying off daughters and sisters and stuff like that, try as much as possible to go for matrilineal. That's going to help you grow your family. So Crawling in My Skin asks, if you do end up making a sequel to this, I'd like to see more intermediate concepts explored. Succession laws in detail, dynamic war alliances, and ruling a duchy kingdom. It'd also be useful to have some tips on how to keep vassals happy, dealing with rebellions, etc. Just a few ideas. Great video. Great. Well, basically, I've loaded up a new game to sort of talk about this this question here. So I don't want to go back into Succession. We just covered that. Same thing with Inheritance and all that. So Succession should be fairly straightforward. Dynamics of war and alliances. Okay, so I'm playing now as a Viking, as a you know, tribal guy, just to demonstrate this. So basically, war and alliances. So let's say I wanted to go to war with these guys, right? Let's declare war on them, subjugation war, whatever. We'll raise our stuff. We can call in allies. Okay. So what we have here is, the reason I loaded up this tribal playthrough here, this tribal guy, is because tribal vassals work just like allies. So it's an easy way to sort of demonstrate how allies work in war. So basically, friendly troops, of course, are in green, you'll see here. Allied troops are in blue. Enemy troops are red. And any neutral troops that are fighting wars that have nothing to do with you are going to be in gray. Now, if you look at the bottom right here, you're going to see two different, in this case, two different things. So this is each different war. So apparently we're actually involved in two separate wars right now. And this is the other war. So this is our ally of our ally King Halfdan. This is his army. He's busy messing around with England right now. And he's called us in as an ally in that war. So we're going to ignore that. That's this over here. And then this one here is the war we actually started. So you can see here the different war scores. -1 means we're losing that war. We don't care. It's not our war. And 0% means nothing's happened, right? The tribal vassals in this case work just the same way as allies. So we have a bunch of different ways we can interact with them, which are really handy, and I'm so glad they put this in. So basically, we can send our own troops. We don't control allies' troops. They control themselves. But what we can do is give them suggestions, give them orders. So what we can do, let's say we want our allies to attack Varend, and we want them to siege it down. What we can do is we can click on Varend, and there's a little button here, Allied Orders Siege, and then we can pick among all our different allies, all our different tribal vassals, who we want to siege that, right? Oh, let's make you siege that, and you siege that, and you just kind of don't do anything yet. You're still gathering your troops, right? Alternatively, we can have them hunt down enemies for us. So right here in the military thing here, there's a new tab. Well, new. It's been there for about a year and a half, but it's newish. Allies and Wars. This is a list of all the people that have joined our war. Here's all our allies in the war. Those are the blue guys. And we can give them orders. We can say, let's say, Sven, I want you to focus on sieging things. Okay. And then, buddy here, Rick okay, whatever. We're going to have you hunt enemies, and you can hunt enemies, and you can hunt, oh, you can siege. And so you can kind of give them orders that way. You can kind of direct what you want them to do, which is so great. That is such a great mechanic. I don't know why it took so long to put that in, but it is a really great mechanic, and I suggest you use it because it's great. There's nothing more annoying than AI allies running around making idiots of themselves in the battlefield. So that's how you get around that. And there's another trick you can use too. Let's say you just want to bolster your own forces, right? We got 2,500 guys here. Let's say we're feeling a little bit, you know, intimidated by his 1,100, which we shouldn't be, but we're going to stay with you anyway. We can have all of our allies form up on us. So we can click here, this button here, we click on our army, right? There's a button here, Allied Order, Attach Army. So now we can tell each and every one of our guys, or however many we want, to attach to our army. And then what they're going to do is they're going to come find us and group up with us and make a big doom stack. You can see them kind of trying to join me here. Speed that up a hair. So you see now they're all piling onto me. So now we have an effective force of 5,600. So now we're in pretty good shape to hurt somebody. We're going to take a bit of a crossing penalty here, but we don't care because they got Shrek'd. And so that's kind of how you can use your troops in battle. Now, while we're on the subject of battle, let's go ahead and look at this army screen here, the siege screen rather. So right now, we're involved in a siege of Varend, right? So right now we've set up our catapults and trebuchets, and we're starving the city out, just kind of waiting for them to give up and be subjugated and just say, okay, we've had enough, leave us alone. But what we can look at here is we can see, okay, we have 6,400 people sieging the town. There's only 380 defenders. We could let this siege down on its own. Let's say we were impatient, though. We really want to get this done super fast. There's this lovely button here, attempt an assault. What that is rather than sitting on the edges of the city, just bombarding it and waiting for the inhabitants to starve to death and get pissed off or whatever, we can just storm in there and try and kill them and just take it by force. Now, this is going to be very quick, but what you need to remember is you want to have a 10-to-1 ratio here, or you're going to have a really rough time. You're going to lose a lot of troops, and it may not even work depending on the fort level. So, basically, we want 10 times more guys than they have. And in this case, we have way more than that, probably like 20 times, if you math that out. Maybe not quite, but as long as you have 10 times more than they do, you can safely attempt an assault. Boom. And just like that, that's ours. Now, I probably should mention, you see here how we have solid lines here? That means that every single holding in this province is occupied. If a province has more than one holding, like this one here, Vestagotland, you see how it has a tribe and a temple, whereas this one just has a tribe? There's nothing here, these are empty. If we were to siege this one down, even though we're not at, that's not the war goal, but if we were to siege this one down, just this tribe here, we would get a dashed line. And the dashed line means some, but not all, of the holdings in this territory are sieged down. So you want to siege as much as you can and get as much war score as you can. Now you see here, between that battle and this siege, we've already gained 100% war score against King Vagan, right? So he would surrender. You're going to be very hard pressed to get the AI to surrender before 100% war score. At 99, they're probably not going to do it. At 100%, they have no choice. So 9 times out of 10, and then by that I mean 99 times out of 100, you're going to have to get them all the way to 100. So you do this, of course, by smashing their armies and by sieging their territory. Now, another thing to note is once you occupy the entire war goal, and you don't have to occupy all territories, or all holdings, even just the top holding, which in this case is a tribe, in this case is a tribe. If you occupy the top holding in both territories, you will get what's called a ticking war score, which literally means your war score will slowly tick up, even if you're not doing anything. As long as you hold the entire war goal, which in this case is this area here, if we were to siege this down, and we're at 100% already, our score would gradually tick up as long as we hold it. So that's one way to kind of break a stalemate of a really tough war. As long as you can hold on to that war goal and not lose too much of your own stuff, you will eventually tick up to 100, and then you can peace them out. So you see here 100%, offer peace, enforce demands. We're going to get piety and prestige from this. He's going to lose a bunch of stuff. And then just like that, we've added this territory to our kingdom. So allies are really, really great in that regard. And it's also a really great way to punch above your weight, right? So if we look over here, let's say you're playing a newbie island game in Ireland and you're busy fighting away, trying to gain your territory, but you run into a really strong duke or something, right? And you just can't progress any further. What you can do is you can actually, let's say, marry one of your daughters off to England or one of these other countries, or Scotland or whatever, right? And so once you have somebody married into them, you can get a non-aggression pact with that country. And then once you have a non-aggression pact, then you can ask for an alliance. If they like you sufficiently, and you have prestige or whatever like that, they can ally you. And once they're allied, then they become just like one of those vassals. And unless they love the person you're attacking more than they like you, they'll probably jump in your war and help you. So you can literally be this little piddly little nobody in Ireland, and you can have like Scotland on a leash essentially, or England on a leash, and you know, basically they come in and stomp your enemies for you, and they really bolster your forces. So marriage and alliances are extremely important in this game, and they can really turn the tide. Now, as for ruling a duchy and a kingdom, ruling a duchy is just basically works like a small kingdom. They work the same way. So basically, it's all about rulership, right? So you have these different focuses. Well, one's actually called rulership, which is funny. Business focuses and stuff like that. So if you're concerned about realm stability, which is I think what the question is kind of getting at here, there's a couple different ways you can approach this. You have carousing. If you want to pick this as a focus, this is going to basically make you a really social butterfly, you know, go out drinking with your buddies and that kind of thing. And this is going to give you events that are going to help improve your relations with your vassals and people around you. People are going to like you better. So that's a helpful one to choose. Another one to choose is business or rulership. Either one of these. Rulership gives you extra stewardship, which is going to give you, which can increase your domain size. This will give you more taxes, which is really helpful. And the business focus doesn't give you quite as much stewardship, but it gives you a nice city vassal opinion boost. This is for your burghers and stuff like that, the town mayors and such. So they'll give you more taxes and such like that. But this also gives you special events where you can increase your money, like get more money. You'll get like merchant related events and things like that, which are going to help you get a lot of money, which is really, really helpful. Now, the other way to look at it is you want to keep your vassals happy. That's sort of what being in charge of multiple territories is all about, of course. So if we look here, here's our vassals. So if we sort by opinion, we can see who likes us and who doesn't. You generally want to keep these people happy, like you were alluding to there in the question. And so how do you do that? Well, there's a bunch of different ways. One, you just look at their wants and their needs, right? So if you hover over, well, let's pick somebody who hates us. Why does this guy hate us? Okay, that's the guy we subjugated, so that's not really relevant. But let's see if we can find somebody. Okay, short reign. Yeah, these guys. Okay, here's a good example. So this guy here, he only likes us by 36. Well, why does everybody else like us by so much? This guy. So you see here, wants a seat on the council. And you see here he's got that red fist. This, of course, is only with, I think it's Way of Life. No, it's Conclave. Sorry, it's Conclave. But that's the DLC that enables this feature here. But see how he has this red fist? That means he's a powerful vassal. He's got some pull in your realm. He's strong. And he's not on the council. If this fist was brown, like this guy here, this guy is also a powerful vassal, but he's also on the council. Right? He's my marshal, right? So all is good. But this guy is powerful, and he's not on my council, and that's pissing him off. So what you can do is you can look at, well, maybe this guy is good at something. Ah, he's got a good marshal score. This guy might make a good marshal. So we can compare him to our current marshal, which is, where'd he go? Right, this guy. Well, this guy has a much bigger marshal score, so we're not going to replace this guy because he's cooler. But that's one way. You can just look at their wants, like, oh, he desires this particular county, right? And depending on your situation, maybe you'd want to give it to him. And that will increase his opinion of you, but you have to be careful in that, of course, because if you make a vassal too powerful, he could potentially challenge you in a rebellion, and that's no good. Another way to do it is, of course, you can just gift him. Like, this guy hates me. Well, we can send him a gift. Send 15 gold to Vagan, increasing his opinion of you by 56. If we do that, now he only hates us by negative 31, right? Another way to do it is by awarding him honorary titles. This is things like, well, designated regent, all these different ceremonial titles and such. And you can see what they do here. So if you make him the regent, you'll get plus 10 opinion. And yeah, it costs a wee bit of salary, but whatever. Not much. The law speaker, right? Plus 10. Now, regent is a special one because it actually does something. The designated regent, whoever is the regent, if you go into a regency, so if you become incapable, you hit your head and you become, you know, knocked out unconscious and you can't rule the realm or whatever, or, you know, if you get killed and your heir is a child, you'll go into a regency. And this will be your regent. Your regent basically temporarily runs the realm for you while you're incapable of running it yourself. So if you're a kid, if you're knocked out or injured or whatever like that, right? So you want to make sure you've got a good regent who's got good diplomacy or whatever other skills you're looking for in a ruler to be this regent. But that's kind of a tangent. Cupbearer doesn't really do anything. Law speaker, these, I don't think these really do anything, but they make them like you more. So let's make him the cupbearer. Oh no, the law speaker. That'll give him an extra 10 opinion boost, right? So all these little things you can do to make him like you more. Now his opinion will be based on, you know, things like religion. If you're a different religion than him, he's not going to like you. You know, you can look at his traits, maybe, if he's got a particular trait. Like, we are a Viking. If he's a Viking, he'll like that. Viking plus 15, yeah, he's a Viking. So, you know, being charismatic will help him. You know, picking carousing, getting a high diplomacy skill will make him like you. If you're a noble, and we are, well, yeah, we're nobles, basically. So we're going to have prestige bonuses. So getting a lot of prestige will help him like you. All these sorts of things, right? Just granting his wishes, giving him land. Giving people land is the quickest way to make them like you, but it's also the most dangerous way to make them like you because it makes them stronger, right? So that'll kind of segue into your next part of your question, which is keeping vassals happy and dealing with rebellions. Rebellions happen when you make a vassal either too strong or a faction gets too strong and they want to oppose you. So For example, let's say you pass a law, and this is usually where it happens. So let's say we pass low tribal organization, right? Yay! I wonder if we can pass this. Okay. So let's say we pass low tribal organizations. You see, unreformed pagan tribal vassal opinion -5. So some of our vassals are not going to like that. And so over the course of time, if they can find enough people to agree with them in that low tribal organization is bad, or, you know, sometimes what you'll do is, you know, abolish council power, or, you know, you want to revoke titles, and these laws will sometimes be opposed by your own vassals, right? So even if you pass them, even if your council agrees and these laws get passed, there's going to be people out there who don't like those laws, and they're going to want to change them, and they're going to do that through factions. So you see here in the top bar here, this button here is factions. Right now we don't have any factions, and that's great. But over the course of the game, factions will form. It's almost impossible to avoid. Somebody will get pissed off about something, and they'll form a faction. And so what's going to happen is, if that faction gains enough support, and you can judge that by hovering over your mouse. We don't have one right now, sadly, but you can see how strong they are. And if their military strength starts to rival your own, they might get uppity, and if they get violent enough and angry enough, you will get a rebellion. And what's going to happen is you're going to get a little ultimatum pop up on your screen. This guy's going to say, look, I want you to change this, or whatever he wants. These are my demands. Either accept them, or we're going to war. Those are your options. So if you think you're strong enough to fight the guy, you can certainly fight him. And if you're not, well, he might beat you in the war, and he might enforce his demands on you, even if you're the king, kind of thing. So to avoid factions, you can threaten people. You can get dirt on them, right? So sometimes you can spy. So if you have this particular spy focus, if you have the intrigue, see here, this focus unlocks the spy on and free from captivity. So if we were to pick that, we could then spy on people. So let's say this guy was in a faction, right? We could spy on him. And so what that's going to do is that's going to have your guys go out and send little, well, spies to kind of watch him and see if they can get any dirt on him. Now, you can get dirt on people just through random events, even if you're not spying on them, but this is a much more reliable way to do it. So you can spy on them, and maybe they're up to something, maybe they're not. But if you spy on somebody long enough, you'll find that eventually you'll probably find something on him. And at that point, you can blackmail him. So let's say you find out that he's secretly sleeping with goats or something, you know what I mean? It's Crusader Kings, weird stuff happens. So maybe you can get some kind of weird dirt on him, and basically you can blackmail. You can say, look, I've got this dirt on you. You can either be publicly exposed, which will give me a reason to arrest you or kill you or whatever the case is, or I can just say, well, keep it hush-hush, but you agree to stay out of all factions. So that's kind of a way you can leverage that sort of thing against faction leaders. Alternatively, of course, you could just do it a lot simpler. It's very much the leader is the faction, really, right? So if a faction leader's got like 10,000 men, that's 10,000 guys you gotta deal with. Unless you kill the leader, then you don't gotta deal with nobody, because the faction basically disbands if you kill the leader. You strike the shepherd, as they say in Braveheart or whatever it is. So that's another thing you do. You can just kill the faction leader. Or the other way you do it is by padding your stats. And what I mean by that is their militancy will rise and they'll get more and more pissed off, but they'll also gain more support and they'll get more military troops over time. And so you want to make sure, and they're not going to attack you if they don't think they can win. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you have a very big army, or at very least a very big looking army. The way the AI calculates this is the number of troops. The AI does not figure on the type of troop. And as we know, in Crusader Kings, some troops are better. Heavy infantry generally kick the crap out of light infantry, right? But of course you get more. So if you look on your Retinues tab, what you can do is you can look into buying some retinues. Right now you look at these different retinues we have. We have heavy, we have pikemen and all these sorts of things. But if you see here, there's a light infantry retinue here, a light skirmish retinue, and we get 550 total troops here, right? Whereas some of these other retinues, you only get like 250 or whatever, right? So you can sort of pad your overall number here. This is your troop count. You can pad that by getting light infantry or light skirmish or whatever retinues. Now granted, they might not be the greatest in a stand-up fight against heavy troops, but that's one way you can sort of increase your numbers and therefore decrease the likelihood of people attacking you from a faction. Okay, moving right along. Rex1987 asks, tips and tricks on how to play as a Norse Viking for Valhalla. Hell yeah, so we can certainly do that. And wouldn't you know it, we're loaded into a Viking game. Surprise, surprise. So the very first thing you want to know as Vikings is Vikings are tribal. So you're not going to be making a whole hell of a lot of money as a tribal ruler, because tribal people just don't make money, right? They just don't. That's for feudal people. So how do you make money as a Viking? Well, you want to raid. So what you want to do is you want to have a bunch of troops. And there's two different ways you can get your troops. First, you can just raise your own levies, right? You could just raise your army levies. I wouldn't recommend raising vassal levies to raid, because vassals don't like having their levies raised. But you can just raise your own domain, your own personal levy to do some raiding. Or, in here, in your positions, you have your, where is it now? Marshal, I think? Yeah. So your Marshal has an organized raid button. And basically, depending on his Marshal score, he'll have a chance every year to gather up a bunch of people who want to go raiding, and that's basically free troops, but they can only be used to raid. You can't use them to fight or anything like that, or to win wars. It's just raiding. So you can do that, just put him in upland or whatever, and he'll eventually summon troops to raid. Or you can just be impatient and just make your own troops. So we have this stack raised here. Now, you'll notice up here there's a button, Toggle Looter. You have to click this button within your own territory before you go into other territories. So you click this, and now you see that's enabled, and it actually renames them to Raiders of King Bjorn. So now these guys are set to raid. So who can you raid? Well, you can raid anybody around you, with an exception, of course. You only really want to raid one territory in. So like, basically people that are touching you, like touching your territory. So these guys here you can raid, these guys you can raid, and so on. You don't want to raid deep into territory, because I don't think it works that way. So if you walk onto this territory, what's going to happen is you see this, that says looting, right? So this is that little icon. This indicates that you are in fact looting. When you're doing land looting like this, the money automatically goes into your bank slowly. When you're doing coastal raiding, which is unique to Vikings, when you're raiding off of boats, the money goes into the boat, and then you have to carry the money back and deposit the money. But basically right now we're slowly looting, and you can see our money going up because we're looting. So you see this orange line here. This is the money that's in this territory, and all the money behind here is money that's in the fort itself. The rest of it is kind of laying out and about, like pillaging whatever happens to be laying around the around the territory near the city. This is the money that's actually inside the fort. So in order to get at this, we have to actually siege. So you can see us here. We're busy raiding and looting and raiding, and you can see here we're actually sieging the holding as well. So now we've got all the money that's outside of the fort, and we can't get the rest of it until we're done this siege. And so once we're done this siege, and you'll see this come burnt to indicate that this siege is over, and it's almost over. You can see now. There it goes. So we took 2.4 gold in that siege, and now we're back to looting. So now we're actually looting the rest of the money that was behind the fort. See, we burnt down the walls and such. So all together, we made a bit of money there. There we go. Looters have completely destroyed the Temple of Skara. That's dirty. That's dirty. So there was a temple here, and we destroyed it because we're assholes. So that's how you do land looting. But of course, being a Viking, you don't want to just loot from land. You want to loot on the high seas. That's what you want to do. So gather your boats up, and by the time the Viking Age happens, you'll have a bunch of boats. So don't worry about that. Now it's 100 troops per boat, and it's 10 gold per boat, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So we have 62 boats here, which can carry 6,200 troops. So we have more than enough to carry our troops here. And this will carry 620 gold in all, which is quite a bit of freaking gold. So now that you set out here, you got to think, okay, well, where should I loot? How do I know where to loot, where the best territories are to loot? Well, you click on this button here, economy. When you click that, it's going to highlight all of the richest territories in green and all the poorest in red. So you can immediately see that this Brugge is a really nice territory to raid. As if you hover over here, max loot 64, possibly, you know, look at all the freaking loot here, right? So we're going to go ahead and loot that. Send your boat over here. Okay, so you want to make sure you keep your boat in the same territory that you're looting. So to get your guys off the boat, you click this little thing here. Now you've got your guys selected, and you send them onto the territory and just loot as before. Now you have to be wary, because people don't like being looted, and they will mobilize their army to stop you. But in this case, we have quite a few guys here. 2,400 guys. That's a fairly large looting party. Quite often what you'll see people do is they'll split this off, and they'll make multiple raiding parties. You make more money faster, and that's great. The problem with that, of course, is you're more vulnerable to getting your butt whooped. So it's up to you what you want to do that way. If you want to split your guys off, if you want to just do it, you know, in one big loot like this, that's totally your call. So you see here, our money is not going up as we loot. You can see we're eating the money here, but we're not gaining money, or we're not gaining it in our bank account. What's happening here is our boats are actually getting the money. So you see here, we're now carrying 23 gold. So we've already loaded 23 gold onto the boats. It looks like they're attacking us here, but not going to work. We have too many guys. So nice try, boys. Now, one thing that's really cool is you can actually pull more than just money out of these castles. We can actually take women. In some cases, you can pull women out of the castle and bring them back to your territory to be concubines. You can get artifacts doing this, which is really, really cool. Artifacts are things that go in here in your treasury. Right now we have nothing because there's nothing in there. But you can get like swords, you can get like treasures that you can then trade to China and all that stuff. It's pretty cool. So you can get all these things. They give you bonuses and such. So you see here, we've actually stopped looting, right? So right now, we have to finish the siege of this castle. We've looted all the gold again. Now you see here, can't loot because it's red now. We've taken all the gold that was outside the fort. Now we have to finish the siege, and once we do, we'll get some more gold, and then we'll start taking the gold that was within the castle. So, boom, there we go. We got 30 extra gold there. And now you see we're going to start eating the gold that was behind that. Back to what we were talking about before, just kind of back on that faction. Here's one of those random events. I believe that one of your vassals can be discouraged from associating with spiritual factions if the proper leverage is obtained. How do you wish to proceed? Ask politely, leave forward a polite request, or do nothing. So we're going to politely request that he stays out of factions. That just kind of ties back to what we were talking about before. Thank you for reminding me to do this. This guy's not going to join factions. That's great. You see now we've burned down the capital, or the castle rather. And so you see this bar has moved, and now we're looting that which was outside of the bar, and so on. And so that's basically raiding in a nutshell. And some great spots to raid, as you can see here, are all along the Iberian Peninsula here. Northern Africa is great, and you can even raid the Pope. He's quite rich. You can raid Roma, and you can raid Venice. It's quite rich as well. So you can make a lot of money doing this, and this is the key, I think, to playing Viking style. Is constantly be raiding, always raid. And we can do that. Stupid, but we did it anyway. We got a ton of money. Now let's load our guys back into the boat. And you get more than just gold with playing a Viking. You get prestige equal to the amount of gold. So we have 139 gold in our boats. So if we sail back here and deposit the money, there we go. We get 139 gold, 139 prestige. Now, prestige is equally important as gold to a Viking. In fact, prestige is important to everybody in the game, but it's particularly important to Vikings and tribal playthroughs because, as you see here, some of our buildings that we want to build actually cost prestige instead of gold. So that's something you want to bear in mind. You want to keep lots of prestige going as Vikings and such. So that's going to really help you out. Lots of prestige, lots of gold, build your stuff like that. Another reason you want to make sure you have lots of prestige as a Viking is what's going to happen is you have a special option. See this here? Raise tribal army. That's only for tribal people, which of course Vikings are. So at the cost of 500 prestige, you can summon 2,500 men to your capital, and that'll add to your fighting force in your war. Now, granted, they are light infantry because they're just tribal people, but still, it's 2,500 guys. That's quite a lot of guys. If you have 1,000 prestige, you can summon two, so you get 5,000 guys. So it's a very great way to turn the tide in your favor and basically punch above your weight. But you have to bear in mind, if you're attacking another tribal guy, he has the same ability. So you want to make sure you want to look at your enemy's prestige as well. If you have a prestige over 500 on your enemy, be aware that he could summon a 2,500 troop army to his aid instantly as well. So something to bear in mind there for sure. Now, another really important thing as a Viking is you want to hold a blot. These are dark religious rituals that you can engage in. If you have a lot of prisoners in your prison, which we have, let's see, we have no prisoners right now. You can get prisoners like we talked about by raiding, or just by doing wars. You'll eventually capture prisoners from castles and things like that, and from battles and such. So when you have lots of prisoners and it happens to be in the winter months, you can go to your intrigue menu and go hold a great blot. So what this is going to do, it's going to perform human sacrifice. You're going to pull your prisoners out of their jails, and you're going to actually sacrifice them to the pagan gods, and you get all kinds of piety and stuff from that, and it's just good times, a lot of fun. Make sure you blot lots of people as a Viking. So the last thing to touch on when it comes to Vikings is the special casus belli. So CBs in Crusader Kings are basically a reason to go to war. You need a reason to attack somebody, and that can be the limiting factor quite often in your growth. But Vikings is, and part of the reason you'll see a lot of people playing Vikings on stream and such, is that they have a special CB. They can attack anybody along a coast. So if anybody has a coastal province, they can attack that and try and take it. So for example, I don't know, Mercia, right? Declare war, conquest of Lindsey. We have no reason to be able to attack these other than the fact that we're Vikings and that's a coast, right? So that's a really, really great way to expand as a Viking. It's really powerful. So I highly recommend you make use of that. It's a really great mechanic, and it makes playing Vikings really fun. If you enjoy an aggressive style in these grand strategy games like I do, Vikings are great because they let you attack people, and it's just fun to ferry people across in a boat and mess with people on a different island. So much fun. But I think that's gonna wrap it up there, guys. I think I pretty much said all I need to say here. I'm gonna leave it there because we're starting to get a little bit long. But yeah, so those are the questions I picked this time. If you guys have anything else you want to ask or something I didn't cover in the video that you wanted to be talked about, by all means, let me know. For now, I think that's going to do it. So guys, thank you so much for the questions. Keep them coming. And for now, that's going to be it. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.